Tuesday by what she called an occupying force. That's a characterization that acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf rejects.
The violence in Portland specifically was there well before DHS law enforcement officials arrived in Portland. The mayor, by his own words and own statements, declared that the city was under violence for more than a month before we got there.
America is listening to Fox News.
Five, four, three, two, one, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
More talks Wednesday among congressional leaders who are trying to reach a compromise coronavirus economic relief deal, but no progress reported. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
All the finger pointing is not going to get to an outcome. We need to sit down and see what we can agree to and do that. And I do think with unemployment expiring at the end of the week, there's incentive for both sides to come together behind something.
The Senate considering a $1 trillion relief package. House Democrats passed the measure 3 times larger than that several weeks ago. Neither will be approved as written. Over coronavirus concerns, the Fed has decided that interest rates should stay put for now.
The central bank expressing concerns that the outbreak will act as a drag on economic activity, hiring, and inflation in coming months, and as a result will leave its benchmark interest rates unchanged at near 0%. The Fed vows to keep rates steady until the threat of the pandemic to the U.S. economy has passed. The central bank announcing no new policies, but will continue to buy about $120 billion in Treasury and mortgage bonds each month, which are intended to inject cash into financial markets and spur borrowing and spending. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
Federal safety investigators headed to the Phoenix area, where several cars of a freight train caught fire Wednesday while crossing a bridge over a man-made lake in the suburb of Tempe, Arizona, causing the bridge to partially collapse. One of the first things they'll want to learn is what started the fire. Malik B., a rapper and founding member of The Roots, has died at 47. The cause of his death not revealed yet. Former Major League Baseball manager John McNamara has died. He skippered 5 Major League Baseball teams in his career, taking the Boston Red Sox to within 1 strike of the World Series win in 1986. John McNamara was 88. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff. Whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs, they're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Hofity, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K, take it easy.
Talk to Us with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Talk to Us with Bob Klitzkie is also brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Every day, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed comes from a little book that I always carry with me called the United States Constitution. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, the right to keep and bear arms. Gives you a tip-off of what Tall Tales is like. Pay some attention to the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, individual freedom, as you were individual freedom, the greatness of the United States of America, and those who would attempt to subvert it, local politics, and other things that I find interesting as of the moment. Tall Tales is, of course, an interactive radio talk show, so feel free to call in and express your opinion, ask questions, etc. 888-8255, 888-82-TALK is the phone number here. And, of course, you can always post on Facebook if you happen to be watching me on Facebook Live. So with no further ado, my faithful companion, the real Joe Cruz, will now take us to Zemi Ikotny. So you'll recall Zemi Ikotny is my local equivalent of Meet the Press. It's my bilingual backwards play on words. Press the meet the press. I look at the editorials from both of our daily papers. The Daily News almost never has an editorial. Well, it has editorials, but it's today it's boilerplate from the USA Today or editorial board instead of a local editorial. And the Post can be depended upon to write local editorials, usually pretty darn good ones. So I look through the editorials, and the better of the two will be awarded the coveted Blue Star. And as I've remarked in the past, if you happen to be near the editorial boardroom of the winning newspaper, you could just about hear the champagne corks pop when the winner of the coveted Blue Star is announced. Now, I have also mentioned that newspaper careers have been made and ruined based on the award of that coveted Blue Star. So it's like everything else on Tall Tales, it's extremely important. The Daily News today, true to form, has run something from some boilerplate from USA Today. And it's titled, it's got an interesting title, so I think I'll spend a little time on it. Anyhow, I spend most of my time on local news, but sometimes local, national or international news bears some discussion here on Tall Tales, especially considering that we do have an international radio listening audience. So the title of today's rendering in the Daily News is Domestic Militia. Stop using agents as political stage props. I forgot to mention, the stuff that the Daily News runs from USA Today and Gannett News Service is 99.9% anti-Trump. The guy who forwards the boilerplate back there has a almost terminal case of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. So one of the hallmarks of Donald Trump's presidency is his misuse of power to advance his political cause. He had peaceful protesters forcibly cleared from Lafayette Square so he could walk from the White House to a nearby church for a photo op. He claimed emergency powers to fund border wall construction that Congress refused to approve, and he leveraged the nation's foreign policy muscle in a failed bid to pressure the president of Ukraine to discredit former Vice President Joe Biden. Now, somebody in the back, out behind the studio here, I can hear him. You probably can't hear him on the air, but as I read each one of these items, that person, they, out behind the studio is hollering, "Fake news! Fake news!" Anyhow, I'll go on. Perhaps none of these is as corrosive to democracy and contemptuous of conservative principles as his deployment of Department of Homeland Security police personnel to select cities to serve as stage props for his law and order campaign. Such federal officers, decked out in full riot gear, or in some cases military fatigues and body armor, have been in Portland, Oregon for several weeks. Now, why would the president even consider sending federal police to Portland, Oregon? It's such a peaceful, orderly place. I'm surprised that, when they cast the the TV show Law and Order, they did it in New York. They should have done it in Portland. Talk about law and order. Law and Order is Portland's middle name. Such federal officers decked out in full riot gear have been in Portland, Oregon for several weeks. They were not invited by local officials or the local anarchists. Trump announced recently that federal agents would be deployed to other cities, including Chicago. To be sure, the government has an interest in protecting federal facilities such as the courthouse in Portland, but these agents are being horribly misused and are accomplishing little but stirring up more enmity. Their units were not created to monitor protests, and they are poorly prepared to do so. Now, no, they were not created to monitor protests, but they do have some training in anti-anarchist, looting, and arsonist type activity. These are not peaceful protests. And once again, we see the mainstream media trying to just twist the knob a little bit. Yeah, I'd agree that you probably don't need to send any kind of troops in for peaceful protests. But I wonder how long it's been since there's been a peaceful protest in Portland. It would be a cold day it would be a cold day in hell before I would consent or agree to the unsolicited, uninvited intervention in any of my cities, said Tom Ridge, a former Republican governor of Pennsylvania and DHS secretary under President Bush. I certainly don't favor that kind of action and certainly don't think DHS was designed for that purpose to start with. And so the Department of Homeland Security wasn't designed with that purpose to start with. But when Department of Homeland Security was set up, it was set up after the September 11, 2001 incident when a couple of planes plowed into the World Trade Center. We didn't realize that instead of destroying tall buildings with airplanes, the bad people would be destroying our cities with Molotov cocktails and various other kinds of arson and looting. So sometimes the commander has to take the troops that he's got and adapt them to the battle that's going on, and not say, well, we're not trained for that, or we weren't set up for that, so we're going to just ignore it. No one should be more troubled by this abuse of law enforcement than principled conservatives. Do you know any principled conservatives, real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
You don't?
Maybe one.
Uh-huh. How about two?
Probably two.
I think they have talk shows on the point. In case you ever wanted to take a look at them.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. All their lives, they have taken it on faith that Washington does not know best and that the GOP would always be for devolving powers to states. The American people can spot a ploy to change the subject from the ravages of Wuhan virus and the Trump administration's horrible job in combating it. They do not take lightly to someone trying to manipulate them. And they can see this episode for what it is, a disgrace to this country and to this presidency. Well, exactly what I would expect from the USA Today editorial board. And I am a principled conservatist, and I do believe in federalism. And I don't think that, I don't harbor the idea that what the decisions or the solutions coming from Washington are the best, that local government is the best for governing local affairs. And ordinarily, I'd say, yeah, we have 50 states, and I say all the time, we used to have a federal government. Now we have a national government and 50 administrative districts. So under ordinary circumstances, I would say whatever it is that the people of Portland want, fine, that's the other side of federalism. But not when you've got mobs wreaking havoc on the federal courthouse, the very essence of the rule of law, the courthouse. And of course, that's why they're attacking it. They're not only attacking it because they like to attack things, but it's symbolic. The courthouse, the very symbol of the rule of law, and they're attacking it. They're trying to set it on fire. They're trying to break into it. They're doing everything that they can to destroy the rule of law in Portland. Well, if you go back to your United States history, you'll see the incident that precipitated the fighting in what some of my Southern friends call the War of Northern Aggression, others call the Civil War. It's when the South Carolina troops attempted to, or not only attempted, but attacked Fort Sumter out in Charleston Harbor. So Lincoln was pretty tolerant. He said, you guys go ahead and do what you want to do, even if you're doing it wrong, but leave our federal installations alone. So that's, to me, that's the line in the sand. And when they're not protesters, the anarchists, neo-Marxists, all of these others, traveling under the banner of Black Lives Matter, decided to turn Portland into a combat zone. And I think the president did the right thing. He did the right thing to send in those federal forces to protect the United States courthouse. So much for USA Today's editorial board. No surprise. Okay, then let's turn our attention to the Guam Daily Post editorial titled, "Do we want to continue to condone gambling parlors or aim to be better as a community?" Guam senators Wednesday heard public input on Bill 226, legislation that would put an end to the continued use of gambling machines and gambling parlors that dot the island. Gambling machine operators have been told recently their licenses will either be revoked or not renewed in light of the new Superior Court ruling that government regulations that were used to issue licenses for electronic gambling machines are invalid. Despite the Department of Rev Tax's decision, it really wasn't the decision of the Department of Revenue and Taxation. They didn't get everybody in the whole department out in the parking lot and then have someone make a motion and vote on it. It was actually the decision of the director of Revenue and Taxation, a certain Daphne Shimizu. Despite the decision of the director of Rev Tax not to issue licenses, and even with Judge Barcina's decision, some gambling parlors are, still open today. The operators of the game rooms that are still open contend their horse race gambling machines or other types of machines are not subject to the electronic gaming machine ban. And I do remember Judge Bordalio's decision several years ago saying that the horse race machines were not gambling machines. My always fading memory suggests that what Judge Bordalio determined was that they were games of skill. Okay, Bill 226, sponsored by Vice Speaker Nelson, would change that. Her legislation would ban the machines that are still in operation on Guam. The legislation, if enacted into law, would also forbid the importation of slot machines, video poker machines, video horse or greyhound machines, pachinko, and similar devices that promise winnings, payouts, or malfunction refunds, the bill states. As expected, certain gambling parlor owners showed up to testify, some of them enumerating the, quote, benefits of their businesses, such as $4 million in gross receipts tax payment to the local government every year, $7 million in annual payroll for 300 plus gambling parlor employees, and local purchases of goods and services. Gambling business operators, as you were owners, listed other numbers to make a case that their businesses contribute to the local economy. But to put the dollars they bring in into context, those numbers are a drop in the bucket compared to the multi-million-dollar tourist industry or defense spending on the island, which employ tens of thousands. What the gambling operators did not bring up, of course, is the downside. Jackie Ariola Marate of Keep Guam Good testified that gambling-related social problems compete for meager government resources that should go towards health care and public education. There's a reason video poker games were banned from Guam many years ago. The toll on families was getting heavier and heavier. Children were being neglected. Families were starving because of gambling addiction in the household. In Bill 226, the Vice Speaker brings back to the forefront an issue that has been in the midst of our community and which some elected officials have really not dealt with, some of them opting to look the other way. There was an attempt to, quote, wag the dog away from the legislature's attention on the gambling problem. An argument was raised by Jigo Mayor Rudy Matanani, who is not running for can I have a round of applause here? Who is not running for re-election. This will be the best thing that Rudy Matanani has done in the 8 years he's been mayor. An argument was raised by Jigo Mayor Rudy Matanani, also at the public hearing, that the stray dogs problem and illegal trash dumping problem should have been the priority over the gambling issue. Now, this is a true story. This is not a tall tale. This is not something that I made up just because, in light of my sarcastic sense of humor. And there is a story that ran in the, ran on KUAM that was going to be a card item until I looked at today's Post editorial, and the card item was going to be Rudy Matanani versus Tilina Nelson, because they squared off. And Here's what the story says. If I can find it here. Yes, Jigo Mayor Rudy Montanani took the mic and told Nelson, no offense, but she has her priorities wrong, she being Nelson. A lot of us people make the wrong choices, and that's just the way life is. Montanani said, but if you don't do anything about this trash and about these stray dogs, pretty soon, I'm telling you the truth, ma'am, pretty soon the dogs are going to be telling us what to do. This is at a legislative hearing. Nelson says, Mr. Montanani, you mentioned about gambling. It's not hurting anyone, and perhaps it's a waste of time for us, and that stray dogs are not important, and it's their choice that they decide to gamble, Nelson responded. Well, I'll tell you, if you're an addict, it's very difficult to discern what is good for you and what is bad for you. So if there's someone from that that's being hurt by something, I cannot just turn the other way. Back to Montanani. I don't like to put people down, but if a person wants to gamble, that's what I'm saying. You cannot stop the person. A lot of these people that are gambling up till now, you know, that's their livelihood. I don't make their choices. And you know what? I really don't care. And you know me, Senator, that anybody that needs my help, I'm always there, more than I want to. So please don't slap me that. So now this is the mayor of Jigo, and in one of the other stories, it points out that Montanani made it clear that he was testifying in his individual capacity. He's not testifying on behalf of the people of Jigo. And for that, I am thankful. But I always wonder how someone who has a position is able to divest himself of his position to take a public stance on any issue. I am a village mayor, but I'm not speaking as a mayor. I'm speaking as an individual. I think that's hokey. So what he's saying is you should be, it's kind of like, you know, when the cop pulls you over and gives you a ticket for speeding, you tell the cop, you know, officer, you should be out catching bank robbers and murderers instead of picking on me. So he's telling Talina Nelson, instead of wasting the legislature's time on such a petty thing as gambling, you should be concentrating on stray dogs and trash in the villages. Now, when I read that, I just had to stop and ask myself, when it comes to stray dogs in the villages and litter and trash, who do most people think is the appropriate government agency to address such things? I kind of thought it would be the mayor of a village. Yeah, and that's not facetious. If there's a big trash dump on the road, who am I going to call? I'm going to call the mayor and say, hey, somebody dumped a lot of Chamorro archaeological relics out on beside the road, you know, refrigerators and washing machines and things like that. And of course, the mayor has made it clear that they don't have time to do anything about litter. And the mayors have the ability to issue citations to litterers. And so far, one mayor has issued one citation. So this whole thing, this Nelson versus Montanani, is kind of like theater of the absurd. So back to the editorial. With all due respect to Montanani, throwing more problems into the discussion on an existing problem doesn't make the first problem go away. That's just a matter of simple logic. Okay, let's take a short break and I'll come back and wrap up Zemi Ikotny.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978, 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So wrapping up this editorial here, Bill 226 offers a chance for Guamanians to re-examine our values as a community and determine what we want to be as a community moving forward. For a few $1 million a year in economic benefit, is it worth allowing the gambling loopholes to remain open? Perhaps we should listen to a former meth and gambling addict of 20 years, Jesse Mendiola. These game rooms, yes, they generate a lot of funds, but they are a breeding ground like mosquitoes for drug and criminal activity, Mendiola said at the hearing. People lose their homes and families get torn apart over gambling addictions. Yeah, game rooms provide revenue for Guam, but it also steals a lot of souls. These words are worthy of reflection, which I'm going to do. Yeah, game rooms provide revenue for Guam, but they also steal a lot of souls. So let's just consider that for a second. How about it? What kind of a community do we want to live in? Do we want to take a strictly libertarian approach and say whatever people want to do, fine, let them do it, so long as it's not hurting me? Fine. Or do we want to take an approach like this? We live in a society, and there are some norms that most of us think our society should observe, and that's the reason that we have these things called laws. Now, it's really popular when you have a discussion like this for the guy over there and that lazy boy to jump in and say, you can't legislate morality. You know, this is kind of a way to make yourself sound like you really know what you're talking about when you don't. Because if you stop and think about it, if you don't legislate morality, what else is left? Isn't the foundation of our laws that regulate conduct, isn't it morality? Why is murder a crime? Why is rape a crime? And on and on and on. Because we've decided that our sense of morals won't tolerate those things, and we're going to act as a society to discourage, make more difficult, punish, whatever words you want to use, those kinds of activities that we have decided are immoral. And we'll do that with something called the law. And I would say that you could take the same reasoning here with respect to gambling machines. If the community has decided that the morality that we want to live up to does not include gambling machines, then they should not be legal. It's just that simple. And there are some really powerful arguments about the addictive effect and the corrosive effect of having gambling machines in the community. I remember back in the poker machine days, which was 25 years ago, you'd see stories in the newspapers about the cops finding small children locked in cars at 11 o'clock at night because both parents were inside playing the poker machines. So, good job, Guam Daily Post. Blue Star time. There we are. Okay, so from there we go to the card. And this is what I have on the card for today. I have the usual Tina and Janella. Tina's gone 24 whole days now, and not detected something that's so dangerous to the health and safety of the people that she needs to call the legislature into special session and waive public hearing requirements for bills coming before the legislature. 24 days of safety, Real Joe Cruz. That makes me feel safe. Yeah. And once again, Tina is kind of like the canary in the coal mine. She seems to spot these dangers long before anyone else does. And it's been 71 days since the PACO pronouncement that Janella did not have to apologize, that the branch apology was enough, and that there would be no more Janellaing. So it's been 71 days since that time, and Janella, no matter when the press conference was, Janella has not Janella'd any reporters, so we're doing pretty good there. And, of course, Louise Muña is no longer on the card, having told us that she's going to resign. We complimented her on her timeliness, announcing that she was no longer a candidate right after the ballots were printed. Yeah. Okay, so those items, and then I go from there to Commissioner Gutherts. Commissioner Judy Gutherts of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities versus Patrick Lujan, the SHPO. And then I've got Eileen Yamashita versus Thomas Kreis. And then Nelson versus Shelton, which is on the card, but again is probably overcome by the editorial today. And then we're going to go back to Neil Weir versus Guam and the hearing on voting and people living in Guam that we had so much fun with yesterday. And then Guam taxpayers versus the EITC, which we talked about earlier. And if we get to it, I'm going to tell you the legal reason that we should not be paying EITC. And that if the governor were to adopt my legal reasoning that I got from somebody else, she wouldn't have to pay out EITC, which would save us, $50 million a year or something like that? And then finally, I've got Nicole Hannah-Jones versus journalism. Nicole Hannah-Jones is the writer for the New York Times, which used to be a newspaper. It's not anymore. Hannah-Jones wrote the piece 1619, which has been kind of like the gospel for the likes of the folks rioting in Portland, etc. So I'm going to go back and start out with Commissioner Gutherts versus Patrick Lujan. And this is a story that ran in the Daily News. GWA, Historic Preservation Office, partly to blame for project delay, added costs. A project to replace 3 water reservoirs has been delayed and now will cost more, in part because of mistakes by the state, the Guam State Historic Preservation Office, said Guam Waterworks Authority General Manager Miguel Berdallo. The project to replace 3 water reservoirs in Jigo and Santa Rita will now cost about $337,000 more because a construction management contract must be extended due to the delay, according to Berdallo. He said the closure of government offices due to the pandemic also contributed to the delay. And then here's a quote. The SHPO did not submit his comments to the appropriate parties, Berdallo told the CCU during its meeting on Tuesday afternoon. We cannot assign the blame to the construction contractor. He did everything he was supposed to do. SHPO, Patrick Lujan, Tuesday afternoon, said GWA caused the delay. GWA changed direction, and now they submitted the proper archaeological requirements separating projects by locations before combining them. Lujan said this complicated matters to some degree that were no way a fault of this office. So if we had graphics here, we would have Miguel Berdallo pointing at Patrick Lujan, who's pointing at Miguel Berdallo. So you're probably wondering why the caption here of this case, or the card, is Gutherts versus Patrick Lujan. I will get there. Another quote, this office can't approve projects until we receive archaeological reports. GWA is notorious for conducting numerous excavations throughout the island without notifying our office, Lujan said. So, Guam Waterworks Authority digs holes and they don't notify the SHPO. So what do you say to that, Real Joe Cruz?
Someone's in trouble.
I was thinking more of a Greta of a Greta Thunberg.
How dare you?
Yeah, how dare they? Yeah. GWA is digging holes in the ground and not notifying the SHPO. How dare they?
How dare they?
The commissioners instructed Berdallo to send a letter to the Guam State Historic Preservation Office, which is part of the Department of Parks and Rec, asking for an explanation for the delay and for corrective action. The commission considered mentioning the cost in the letter, but Berdallo opposed that idea, stating he wanted to be as, quote, diplomatic as possible with the SHPO. He said bones were discovered last week at the construction site of the Northern Wastewater Treatment Plant, an issue involving the SHPO, which has the potential to disrupt the construction activity. Now, Commissioner Judy Gutherts originally proposed billing the State Historic Preservation Office for its approximate share of the delay. Yeah. Cost $337,000. Judy said, okay, send him a bill for $337,000. She went on to say, I'm tired of hearing government agencies get off the hook for not doing their work. When our people are doing their work, Gutherts said. I've heard of other things that have happened from that office, causing delays in government action, and we need to know why. Gutherts versus the SHPO. Lujan, who became State Historic Preservation Office in June 2019, said his office has improved communication with developers since he's been there, reducing delays. Now, you remember who Patrick Lujan replaced, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Linda Uggan?
Linda Uggan. GWA is a major stakeholder of ours that we've needed a better relationship with, and this perhaps will force us to come to the table for better working relationships moving forward. And then coverage in KUAM. The law requires that any digging at potential burial grounds must be halted while archaeologists investigate the cultural significance. But at a CCU meeting today, Guam Waterworks Authority General Manager Miguel Bordallo said there was a delay in the State Historic Preservation Office response that's slowing down the project and raising costs. Commissioner Judy Guthertz was not pleased. Quote, so the delay really came when because the SHPO didn't follow proper procedures. Guthertz questioned Bordallo. In part, and also in part because of the time the contract was awarded, etc. Back to Guthertz. I wonder if there's some liability with the SHPO's office. Why can't we charge them with some of these costs? We'll certainly look into that, Bordallo said. I am serious. I am tired of hearing government agencies get off the hook for not doing their work when our people are doing their work. So, Guthertz versus the SHPO. The State Historical Preservation Officer. So my comment in general here is this. You know, we're in really tough economic times, and we're going to be in tough economic times for quite a while. And the only thing that's going to pull us out of these tough economic times is business. People coming in and starting businesses, making profits, paying wages, investing money. So we talk all the time, well, we got to make Guam more business friendly. But this is a pretty good example of how business friendly the island is when you got two government agencies fighting over digging holes. Not business friendly at all. If you're going to dig a hole, you got to tell us about it. Well, you know, we tell you about it, but you guys aren't doing your jobs. Okay, let's take a short break here. We'll be back for Eileen Yamashita versus Thomas Kreis.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Nagotnya. They're open for business for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them at 479-2652 and get your Mezcla fix today.
So here we are, Eileen Yamashita versus Thomas Kreis. Eileen is a columnist for the Daily News, and this is what she wrote in her column. UOG should have stepped up as a leader in island education. And then she explains, when the governor decided we would wear masks, she didn't ask us for our opinion. It was decisive leadership. And while some of us wrinkled our chubby noses, That wouldn't be me, Real Joe Cruz.
Of course not, sir.
I do not have a chubby nose.
No, you don't.
Yeah. Similarly, decisive leadership was needed for schools months ago, when the writing was on the wall that only a vaccine would eliminate the Wuhan virus. Think tanks for schools should have been activated. Think tanks for schools. Now, I suppose I have to say my bad, because I did not activate the Tall Tales think tank to deal with the situation in the schools. The Tall Tales think tank, of course, being one of the largest collections of high-powered intellects on the island. Yeah. It's disappointing that the University of Guam didn't become that decisive leader for education between the president, professional development and continuing education, School of Education, Research Corporation, and other units. There's no shortage of Tritons who could address the looming threat to education, to enlighten, discover, serve. That's UOG's mission statement. UOG, a regional land-grant institution, is expected to stand up and be the leader in the room, especially in learning. We started as a teacher training program in 1952, and that foundation should be the foundation. Research, best practices, training modules, actual classroom situations, parent support modules, teacher support modules, leadership support, on and on and on. You know, a lot of modules there, right? UOG needs to learn from GCC President Mary Okada. Her timing and decisive leadership delivers. Seemingly, as soon as the unemployment dilemma to include the needs of the Department of Labor were obvious, GCC went into action. They found resources and served. They opened up help centers and provided support. Guam's local leadership developed. Of course, they worked in collaboration with partners, etc. UOG should have done the same. Now 70% of public school families lack confidence to send their budding geniuses to school. Safety and fear of the virus, of course, are at the forefront of the parents' minds. An education awareness program, a walk-in program, a demonstration program to show parents going to school is safe would have alleviated some of the concerns. So in other words, Aline Yamashita is saying, hey, you guys, Thomas Kreis out there, you guys are the university. You are the font of wisdom when it comes to education. And when we really needed your expertise, you didn't do anything at all. So she goes on, and she fleshes out that theme. And the reason I put this on the card is because of her punchline. And this is her punchline. This is directed to Thomas Kreis. Instead of worrying about Disney and unequal treatment, the president should have been worrying about the future of this island and region. Instead of worrying about Disney and unequal treatment. Now, you recall that Thomas Kreis sent a long letter to the editor. Kreis, Disney and policy is a reminder of unequal treatment for those in the territories. Remember that, Real Joe Cruz?
I do, sir.
Yeah, and remember, he was roundly criticized right here on Tall Tales for going, you know, for showing how woke he was, invoking identity politics, and sort of pandering to the separatists. So I agree 100% with Aline Yamashita that the president of the university, instead of worrying about Disney and unequal treatment, the president should have been worrying about the future of this island and region. Yeah, good job, Aline. Okay, next item on the card is Nelson versus Shelton. Expanded gambling ban legislation to be heard today. Of course, the public hearing is over. It's been reported on. It was the editorial. But it's going to be interesting to see the battle between Nelson who is very anti-gambling, and Shelton, who's on the other side, to see how that one sorts out. We'll find out if sisterhood is powerful. Okay, that brings us up to Weir versus Guam. I can just get started on here before the big halftime Joe. Jesse Limtiaco, I guess this is the part of the show you've been waiting for, but you're probably going to wait until after the break to call in, and I'll give you some time on the air. We can pick up where we left off yesterday if you want to. But the thing that really got me here, got me started, but there's a lot more to say about this, is a quote from Neil Weir. The ongoing disenfranchisement in U.S. territories is particularly concerning because of the undeniable connection it has to issues of race. Now, you know, if you have arguments, there are some arguments that could be made about the situation where we have 5 insular territories that are colonies that are unable to vote in the national parliament. And those kinds of things can be and ought to be addressed. But when you play the race card, what you're doing is you're cheapening your argument and you're casting the territories in a false light. We're not the south side of Chicago here, Neil Weir. He says the ongoing disenfranchisement concerning is because of the undeniable connection it has to issues of race. Well, what is that undeniable connection? Is the reason that, and that's kind of where Jesse went yesterday, is the reason that people living on Guam can't vote, is it because of race? Because we're not of the right race? Let me play the race card here. If everyone who lived on Guam, all 170,000 of us, had white skin, if we were all white, then we could all vote, right? Because this is just a matter of the connection to race is undeniable. We could all vote if we were all white. But since we're not all white, that's the reason that we can't vote. That's what Weir is saying. And of course, it ain't so. The reason that we can't vote here is pretty easy. The reason we can't vote is because we don't live in the state. Okay, let's take a break for that big halftime show, and we'll come back and spend a little time with this issue after the break.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Ordering a congressional cover-up. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Members of Congress now required to wear face masks in the House chamber. Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
This responsibility is of paramount importance, particularly in the midst of a pandemic.
The Speaker's order issued after Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert tested positive for the coronavirus.
Now that I apparently have it, I will be very, very careful to make sure I don't give it to anybody else. And we'll see how it goes.
Congressman Gohmert says aside from being a little tired, he has no symptoms. More protests overnight at the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. Oregon's Governor Kate Brown claiming some federal agents will start pulling out later today, but acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf tells Fox's The Ingram Angle, not yet.
DHS law enforcement presence will remain in Portland until we can be assured that the plan put in place by the governor and the Oregon State Police is working, is effective, and they can continue to do it night after night operate and keep the criminal and violent activity away from that courthouse.
Secretary Wolf says he rejects the governor's claim that federal agents are an occupying force. Big tech CEOs defending themselves against bias claims in a Capitol Hill hearing on Wednesday.
Several Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee questioned technology CEOs about perceived biases and what is and isn't allowed on their platforms.
I don't understand why YouTube and therefore Google thinks it's appropriate to silence physicians.
Florida Republican Greg Steube asked Google CEO Sundar Pichai about the removal of a video showing a doctor talking about hydroxychloroquine as a coronavirus cure.
We believe in freedom of expression, and there is a lot of debate on YouTube about effective ways to deal with COVID.
But Pichai says during a pandemic, the platform relies on guidance from public health authorities.
Fox's Jared Halpern. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer staycation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,900 by calling Family Finance. Agana 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo at 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tropical storm Isaias has formed in the Atlantic, now buffeting Puerto Rico with storm force winds, headed for the Dominican Republic and Haiti next. Possibly Florida by this weekend, but the storm track still uncertain.
We can't really even tell you what part of Florida, whether the Keys or southeastern Florida or a different part of Florida, or hopefully maybe it'll stay offshore. You know, at this point, we can't be any more specific. But you should use this time to prepare. It's always easier to fill up the car and get all those hurricane supplies you didn't get before the season.
Meteorologist Eric Blake at the National Hurricane Center. The largest school system in Pennsylvania announcing it'll begin the academic year online.
Philadelphia Public School Superintendent William Haidt Jr. says while students will go back to school on September 2nd, they won't return to their classrooms until November at the earliest due to COVID-19. The Philadelphia Inquirer reports the move was made after the idea of a hybrid model of in-person and online learning got a lot of opposition. The Philadelphia Federation of Teachers says a survey shows that 74% of 7,500 teachers and other school workers say they don't feel safe returning to school buildings. If approved by the school board, online instruction for the district's 125,000 students would run at least through the first marking period, which ends November 17th. In New York, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
In Florida, Miami-Dade County schools also announcing they'll start online for at least the first 6 weeks of the school year. Funeral services for the late Congressman John Lewis will be held in Atlanta today at the Ebenezer Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King served. Representative Lewis died on July 17th from cancer. He was 80 years old. After an up day on Wall Street, Asian stock markets closing Thursday mixed. Dow futures are trading more than 70 points lower. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon or call 646-1463.
Woo! Wee! Just Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, back after that big halftime show. We are back in D.C. at the hearing on voting rights in the territories. And it's unfortunate that I wasn't there myself, because I would have been the only person in the room who understood what the subject is about. As an example, Neil Weir, who holds himself out as leading this nonprofit in favor of the territories, either doesn't know or knows better, but wants to sound good. Because after he goes into this is what he says. He goes on, we cannot ignore the fact, first he says, the ongoing disenfranchisement in U.S. territories is particularly concerning because of the undeniable connection it has to issues of race. We cannot ignore the fact that by silencing citizens in the territories, we are silencing Americans who have long faced racism, systemic bias, and racial exclusion. Very good for a neo-Marxist, Neil Weir. And then he really tips his hat by saying, we ask Congress to act so that citizens in the territories can finally vote and have their voices heard. It's the right thing to do, the moral thing to do. In 2020, it's long overdue. Well, he's asking Congress to act. And what is it that he would have Congress do? How about this? Michael San Nicolas, our delegate, drafts up a bill, and it says that beginning with the next election, Guam shall elect one member of the House of Representatives and 2 members to the United States Senate, and that for the next presidential election, Guam shall have 3 electors in the Electoral College. San Nicolas drafts up that bill, right? It goes through committee hearing, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say the House passes it, and then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate passes it, and then it goes to the president, and the president signs it into law. What happens? Nothing. Because Congress doesn't have the ability to convey seats in the House or the Senate or the Electoral College to anybody. That's a matter for the United States Constitution. So again, the only way that Guam would have a voting representative in Congress, 2 senators and 3 electoral votes, would be if the Constitution were amended, which is not going to happen, or Guam were admitted as a state. Not too likely. If Guam were admitted as a state, then we'd have 2 senators and we'd have 1 congressman. This is an inconvenient truth that people like Neil Weir don't seem to to want to get on the right side of. He goes on with more of the same kind of tripe. Weir said the United States Supreme Court's decisions from a year ago, the insular cases, state constitutional protections and political equality don't necessarily apply in the territories. The insular cases don't have anything to do with political equality at all. And he goes on to say, which are home to, quote, alien races. And that's a story all by itself, more demagoguery. And Jesse picked up on that. Well, you know, the insular cases are based, are racist. Not so. And Robert Underwood knows it's not so, and Neil Weir knows it's not so. For no other reason that I wrote a scholarly piece based on the holdings in DeLima versus Bidwell and Downs versus Bidwell, pointing out that that's a fallacy. The key case here is Downs versus Bidwell. It was 186 pages long. There were 3 different opinions, 3 concurring opinions. None of the holdings had the words alien races in them. And as I explained yesterday, the case was about bananas, whether or not importing bananas from Puerto Rico to the Port of New York would allow the collector of customs in New York to collect customs duty on them. Nothing to do with political rights. But, you know, the demagogue picks up these little things and throws them out there, not to appeal to reason, but to inflame emotion. And if you're listening to Jesse yesterday, you could see that it worked. Jesse doesn't have a good handle on all the facts, but he's pretty emotional, and he knows what it is that he thinks happened. So I guess I would have 2 requests at the end of the day: that Rudy Matanani not go to the legislature and speak anymore until he's out of office, and that Neil Weir cancel himself out as a spokesman for the interests of Guam, because they're not helping. First of all, in order to be self-righteous, you got to be right. You can't be wrong and be self-righteous. Okay, so I thought we'd talk in some hypotheticals about where we are and where we want to go and how we could get there. And I talked about the Rube Goldberg machine a couple days ago, but I have Wikipedia on Rube Goldberg. A Rube Goldberg machine, named after American cartoonist Rube Goldberg, is a machine intentionally designed to perform a simple task in an indirect and overly complicated way. Usually these machines consist of simple, unrelated devices. The action of each triggers the initiation of the next, eventually resulting in a stated goal. And the example I gave you, Real Joe Cruz, was that device in the atrium of the Micronesia Mall, you know, paddles and balls and slides and things like that. Well, if you were able to connect part of that machine to a hairbrush, maybe not a good example for you.
Probably not, sir.
To a hairbrush, so that by starting the machine, the hairbrush would ultimately move back and forth. So you start the machine and the balls all go around and all of these other things happen, and the hairbrush would move over your hair. That is a Rube Goldberg device. Now, this guy that surfaced on Ray's program, I think it was on Monday, John P. Caves. You remember John Caves? And Ray sent along an article to me entitled "The Debate Over Statehood for D.C." In the debate for state over D.C., we also need to consider representation for the U.S. territories. And he has a plan. And this is what, let me see what his plan says. I hope I can find it. Oh, yeah, here it is. He says, statehood does not seem practical right now for the other four territories, other than Puerto Rico. Their populations are so small that it would require an unwieldy enlargement of the House to represent them in proportion to the existing states. Guam, the largest, had 1/3 the inhabitants of Wyoming, the smallest state in the last census. American Samoa's population was less than that of Frederick, a mid-sized city in Maryland. Instead, we might consider a constitutional amendment, here it comes, that would give those four territories a voting delegation in the House. The delegation would have one vote, as the smallest states do. A number of delegates would be elected to it from each territory in proportion to population, and the delegation would hold an internal ballot to decide how to cast its congressional vote. Yours truly, Rube Goldberg. So, Guam, in this delegation, Guam would have like 4 members, and the CNMI 2, and Samoa 1, and the U.S. Virgin Islands 4. And then they would all go to the House. I suppose they'd have a special seating section, and when it came time to vote, they would have their own internal vote and decide how the one vote that they had could be cast. Silly. Absolutely silly. But it points out it's valuable from the standpoint that, that in order to have a vote in Congress, you got to be a state. And that Guam is too small right now to be a state. And there are probably a lot of other good reasons that statehood would not be practical for Guam. The easiest of which to understand goes all the way back to the Insular cases, and it's called the uniformity clause. And I've read this before. Article 1, Section 8. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, etc. But the duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So that's what the Insular cases were about. The uniformity clause does not apply to Guam. Therefore, Guam is a free port. We don't have to charge tariffs on imports to Guam. And therefore, Guam can have the mirror image income tax system that we have, and we can have our tax rebate system, which no other jurisdiction under the American flag has. So people lose sight of the fact, San Nicolas, somewhere in his testimony, says, maybe I can find it here. Yeah, San Nicolas says that he knows that the reason that we can't vote is not because anybody in Congress has any ill will towards Guam. It's very charitable in that regard. So let me see what I got. I suspect, it's Jesse. I was thinking perhaps another Joe. Is the Joe line open?
It is, sir.
Yeah, we haven't had a call from another Joe for a couple days. Okay, go for it, Jesse.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday you were saying that I said that we were being punished, but I didn't. I can't remember if I used punished, but what I meant to say was were the people, Americans moving to Guam or even residing on Guam who've never left are being penalized if they have to go. That was my feeling towards that. That was not necessarily a punishment where they're going to spank you or something, but the fact that you have to move and to enjoy that part of being an American that others in the 50 states get to enjoy. But it just, I did some research and I was looking at I didn't realize that the 13th and the 14th and 15th Amendments were how do you say this? Were put in 1968. Were made to the Organic Act, and it just didn't make. That's kind of where I was going with yesterday. I was just kind of confused because, it didn't make any sense to include those things and not include other parts of the Bill of Rights like the 9th and 10th Amendment, and then also the 23rd Amendment of the Constitution, how it gave DC residents the right to, or not the right, but it basically paved the way for them to vote for president and vice president.
So you would have.
It happened before that. The 23rd Amendment even happened before the Organic Act was amended when they threw in the 14th and 15th Amendment, which helped Dave Davis win his case.
Let's hang on. Let's stop for just a second, okay? The 1968 amendments are referred to as the Mink Amendments, and I've gone into that many times on the show, always pointing out that the same provisions were in the Organic Act as enacted. The text of all of those amendments were in the Organic Act as enacted. The Mink Amendment just said that to the extent that they hadn't applied before, they apply now. And so Dave Davis probably could have won his case even in the absence of the Mink Amendment, because there's a strong provision in the Organic Act as in 1950 dealing with voting. As far as D.C. is concerned, why would you think that the Mink Amendment should have included the 23rd Amendment?
Well, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is that I'm just trying to figure out why if Congress already knew that D.C., they're already basically acknowledging with the 23rd Amendment that they recognize that Americans need to vote for the president, So why didn't they just do that to all the other territories?
Because you're reading, Jesse, you're reading something into the 23rd Amendment that's not there. That isn't what the 23rd Amendment says. The 23rd Amendment, the effect of the 23rd Amendment is that people in D.C. can vote. This isn't a recognition of some grand principle. And if you go back to the time that it was enacted in 1961, it was something that the Democrats wanted because D.C. is 99% Democrat.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it wasn't a recognition of some principle that people deserve to vote, et cetera, and it had nothing to do with the territory. So I don't see how you read.
Right. No, that's what I mean. Is it recognized the states, but not the territories. But that's what I'm saying. They should have. The fact that Congress is already amending the Constitution on just for D.C. residents alone, it's kind of an acknowledgement that Americans need to vote for the president. But also, and then I was trying to read up more on the 24th Amendment and how that played in, and then just going back again to the like you were saying, how you moved to Guam back then, and then you lost your privilege to vote for the president, right?
Yeah, but I didn't see that I was punished or anything like that. I think those kinds of words are inappropriate in a discussion because they tend to have an emotional dimension to them. When I moved here, I knew I wouldn't be able to vote because I was moving out of a state.
Right, exactly. But I didn't agree. That's what I'm saying is I'm not trying to say that you're being punished. You're basically, that's your choice, to move to Guam, and knowing, that you won't be able to participate anymore. But in my case, I never planned on moving to the States, and I disagree. I don't like the fact that you had to move to Guam and then you couldn't vote, because there's also that uniform overseas, absentee voting act or whatever it is, and apparently it grants people United States citizens of the United States to vote while they're overseas somewhere, but except in the territories. And I just don't see, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like, why? What's so bad about the territories? I mean,
well, see, Jesse, this is where you and I always get caught up. You don't need to use words like bad and punish and things like that to have these discussions, because they get in the way of understanding. Now, let me explain the UCAVA statute to you, okay? And I will agree that it's not the most logical approach, but this is what it provides. It provides that anyone who moves overseas for the rest of his life, even if he tears up his American passport and never wants to go back, can send a letter to the last address, to the state where he last lived in the 50 states, and they will send him an absentee ballot for, all the federal offices for every election. If a citizen of Guam moves overseas and decides he's never going to come back to Guam, and he sends a letter to the election commission, they will send him an absentee ballot for every Guam election, even though he doesn't live here and he's never coming back. You see the difference?
Right. But again.
Now let me go on, okay? Now, Weir brought suit on this very statute, because the UCAVA statute does extend to the Northern Marianas. So if you move from Wisconsin to the Northern Marianas, you can vote absentee in Wisconsin, because that's what the statute says. And the reason for that is that UCAVA was enacted before the Covenant. And when UCAVA was enacted, it had, it's told how it specified. What it did was it treated the territories like states. It didn't treat the territories like foreign countries. But it didn't mention the Northern Marianas, so you could go from Wisconsin to Northern Marianas and vote absentee. And I've mentioned this on the air before. Some smart lawyers in the Northern Marianas tried it, and they voted in California. And, they voted in November, and by January, they're getting letters from the California taxing authority saying, you got to pay California tax. So they decided they didn't want to vote in California after all. But if we were, if we were going at this rationally, instead of saying Congress should give us the right to vote, there is a tenable argument that the UCAVA Act could be amended, and this is strange, to treat Guam like a foreign country for UCAVA purposes, so that a person, Jesse, so that a person moving from a state to Guam could vote. But that creates all kinds of new problems, because we'd have some people who had one time or another lived in the States and came back, and we would have others that never went to the States, and they'd be saying, well, it's just not fair. He gets to vote and I don't get to vote just because he lived in the States for a year once upon a time. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Okay.
And then the further complication is this, that voting, is a numbers game. If you had like Wake Island, for instance, let's say that we let people in Wake Island vote, and there are maybe 100 people living on Wake Island. How much attention do you think the candidates for public office would pay to Wake Island? None. So if we had that strange UCAVA situation, it wouldn't give us any more power in Washington, because whatever votes we had would be so diluted over the states, and there wouldn't be enough of them to matter.
Well, yeah, I agree, but there's just, obviously there's so many scenarios that you can come up with, but at the end of the day, it just seems like the Congress again is just ignoring the fact that Americans are living in territories and aren't being granted the right granted the privilege to vote for people that ultimately govern that govern our island, or so
what would you have Congress do, Jesse?
Well, what I would like them to do is do what you were saying earlier. At least that they're already showing that. Like, look now, with DC, they're talking about it becoming giving them the full representation.
And they're talking about admitting DC as a state.
Right.
So would you have Michael San Nicolas introduce a Guam statehood bill?
Well, yes, anything, because right now, what is the choice? I mean, the choice is either statehood or independence, and obviously
there really are only two choices, Jesse.
Exactly.
Two choices: what we have right now and independence. That's all we've got.
Okay, well, yeah, that's true. So if we stay in this thing for this status quo, then it just doesn't make sense. That's what I'm saying about being an American. It's just un-American to, in my view, it's un-American to be status quo, to be in this status, this political status. Are we Americans or are we not? That's all I want to know.
Very easy, Jesse. We are Americans. We are Americans just like every other American.
But yeah,
I got to take a break, Jesse.
Yeah. Okay, boss. Okay.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows but branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Talk Tells with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978, 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Here we are, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago. Nobody on the baseball field, nobody in the stands. Jesse and I just had a friendly chat about voting in Guam, and I'm going to continue on. Jesse, if you want to call back later on, okay, but just let me jabber a little bit about this subject in general. As has been pointed out before, in the American system as put together in the United States Constitution in 1789, political rights are a function of states. You'll recall that the 13 colonies combined and delegated some of their powers to a national government that finally sat in Washington. And the national government the election of the national government was a function of the states. States had members of the House of Representatives, senators, and members in the Electoral College equal to the total of representatives and senators. Political rights have always been in the states. Civil rights started out that way, but as time went on, an overactive judiciary got into the picture, and now we probably see the national government as the source of most of our civil rights. Political rights, states, civil rights, national government. So Guam is not a state. Therefore, people living in Guam don't have the same political rights that people living in one of the 50 states have. It's just that simple. It's not a punishment It's not something that someone did to somebody. It's not irresistibly linked to race, as Neil Weir would have you believe. It's just that when the United States became an imperialist country in 1898, it was a classic case of trying to stuff 10 pounds of groceries into a 5-pound sack. It didn't work because the Constitution didn't make any provision for colonialism. So the closest that you come to it is Article 4, Section 3, which says that the Congress can make needful rules and regulations for the territory of the United States. Well, at the time the Constitution was enacted, the United States had one territory. It was called the Northwest Territory, what is nowadays Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio, and Indiana. That was the Northwest Territories. So that's probably why that clause is there. But as the country moved west in accordance with the section of the Constitution talking about admission of new states, as the country acquired territory, acquired land, that land became territories. And under the supervision of Congress, and the governments weren't a whole lot different from ours. And the territorial governments had a legislature, had an appointed governor, had a court system, etc. And when territories had enough people first to be admitted, their non-voting delegate would introduce an enabling act in the United States Congress. And the enabling act talked about the terms upon which that colony would be admitted as a state. And the state would then put together a constitution. If the constitution was acceptable to Congress, Congress would pass a resolution admitting that territory into statehood. That's how you get to be a state. That same mechanism could apply to Guam, except for all the reasons that I've mentioned so many times. Not enough people. The smallest state is Wyoming, and it has over 600,000 people. We've only got 160,000 people. The average is about 700 or 750,000 people per representative. So statehood is out of the picture. So we are a territory of the United States. And what that means right now is we're entitled to all of the civil rights as anyone living in any one of the states. We're not entitled to the political rights for the reason that I mentioned. We have the ability to travel from Guam to any of the 50 states at will, provided that the Wuhan virus police will allow us to do it. So that's where we are. Now, there are a lot of good things about living in an unincorporated territory. One, the United States income tax does not apply here. As I've talked about before, we have a mirror image of the Internal Revenue Code. All of the money stays here. We don't send any money to Washington. If Guam became a state, that would be over. In fact, I think if the insular cases were overruled and the uniformity clause applied to Guam, then we would have to start sending taxes to Washington, D.C. Now, if we didn't have that tax break that we have now, what would our government look like? What would our local taxes would have to be that high? The taxes would be so high that no one could afford to live here. That would be one downside. We'd lose our duty-free status. That would be another. We wouldn't be able to grant, excuse me, the GIDA economic development type certificates that provide for a tax abatement. So economically, if Guam were to become a state tomorrow, or if the insular cases were overruled tomorrow, it would be an economic disaster. So turning then to voting, how could the system be changed to allow people to vote on Guam to vote? First question is, who can do it? And the easy answer is Congress can't. So if you watched that hearing on TV the other night, it's kabuki theater. All these congressmen are being so nice and so polite and so solicitous to the territorial delegates, but they know that there's nothing they can do to help the delegates. They can't give people living in Guam the ability to vote for Congress and the president. It just cannot be done. But it was a nice show. I mean, it really kind of warmed your heart, or made your tummy warm to watch it. But it was basically a waste of time because Congress doesn't have the authority to give the right to vote to anybody. So if that's the case, then my analysis is this. We, meaning all of us who live here, have two basic choices. We can stay as part of the American empire, a colony, or we could petition the Congress for independence. And when I say we, I don't mean the government of Guam. The government of Guam, you know, if you want to be a purist on this, the government of Guam is the colonizer's government. And people who serve in the government of Guam are quislings, because the United States Congress, and an act of Congress, created the government of Guam. So what kind of inconsistency is it when you expect the government of your colonizer to decolonize you? So if you take a look at it from another way, if there is this groundswell sentiment for independence on the part of Chamorros, let's say that there is an identifiable group on the island called Chamorros, then the Chamorros should be the one petitioning for independence, not the government of Guam or anybody else who wants independence. And the way you do that is you'd go to the United States Congress, you'd make all of your demagogic and emotional arguments and say, set my people free. Guam should be independent. Please pass a law making Guam independent, like you did with the Philippines back in the 4th of July, 1946. We don't want to be Americans anymore. Maybe Congress will do it, maybe they won't. Probably they won't, but they darn sure won't if you don't ask them to. So along those same lines, you know, we talk about, the United States won't let us do self-determination because of the Davis case. Well, the same principle. And let's see. Oh, Jesse's back already, and I got another call coming in too, huh? Okay. Yes, Jesse.
Yeah, hello?
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
I just wanted to touch up on something. I wanted to ask for maybe you could get your email or something, email you some things off the, But anyways, it just, going back to like the tax, right? If Guam became a state, we're going to get tax. Isn't there something about a poll tax that they removed in the I think the federal government, I don't know if it's in the Constitution, but I was,
it's an amendment
about the poll tax.
It's an amendment, yeah.
So I mean, that alone, the fact that they moved that already kind of shows that, the Congress is acknowledging that they want Americans to participate, and they want, not disenfranchise anybody by allowing them to participate in voting for the representatives. And then on my second thing is Mitch McConnell on an interview said that he believes that it's part of some democratic socialist agenda to have the territories get more people to have a voice in the House and Senate. And he's like, he said as long as he's in the Senate and the majority leader, he's not going to have that. So I'm like, man, wow, that's like just totally un-American. Like you just want one side. You're totally writing off 4 million people or 4 million Americans because you feel it's not advantageous to your party, or So it's just crazy. I mean, this is to me it's crazy, but I just want to, I mean, I've been an American my whole life, and as much as I want to say, I lean towards independence, but at the end of the day, I grew up in America. My parents did, their whole life. So, I mean, is it too much to ask for equal representation and all that stuff in the House and the Senate and the presidency?
Yes, it is, Jesse, for the reason that I keep explaining.
I know, but
it's too much to ask.
But again, we didn't. That's why we need to vote and just say, what is it? Does Guam is it, is it better to be an independent nation and just work the same relationship that the FSM and Palau have with the United States? I mean, they can travel everywhere in the United States. They can get a job. They can go to school. So isn't that something that they allow the military to use their place in the time in the time of need, or when that time comes for defense?
Well,
so
maybe then
I don't know. I mean,
maybe then that delegation of Chamorro should go to Congress and say, please give us the authority to become a state in the Federated States of Micronesia.
Yeah, whichever. I mean, whatever.
That would work, right?
Yeah, I guess, but I'm just saying that there just needs. I really believe this status quo needs to change. It's been going on for 123 years now, and it needs to be solved. I mean,
I always keep coming back to the same thing. How are you going to solve it? Where is the solution?
Well, again, the Congress is the one that has. They can make all they could let us go or give back sovereignty. Guam never had sovereignty.
The Congress could let Guam become independent, but the Congress cannot give people in Guam the right to vote unless they make Guam a state.
Right. I understand that, but
and that's it. I mean, no matter how you feel, this is not a feeling exercise, Jesse. It's a thinking exercise. So no matter how you feel about it, you come up with some pretty hard facts that don't really care how you feel. So if I had the ability to do it, I would have a quote plebiscite, and there'd be one question on the plebiscite: should Guam become an independent sovereign country separate from the United States? Yes or no? And if we did that, I wouldn't care who voted, because that's the only real question.
Right, exactly. But and then but people are going to say, oh, Bob wants that, but how does that give justice to the native inhabitants or whoever whatever defines those people?
The native inhabitants are more entitled to more justice than I am?
No. What I'm saying is that how the treaty the treaty that was made between the U.S. and Spain, they acknowledge that the native inhabitants, exist, and apparently in the United Nations' eyes or the world's eyes, that indigenous people have a right to have self-determination.
Yeah, according to the United Nations, women have a right to. The United Nations to me is sort of like something that ought to be on the comic book pages of the newspaper. I got to take a break, but thanks for calling back, Jesse.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont, or call 646-1463.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumont. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
The Point is
Did you get Janella there, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir. It's the computer had a glitch up here on the screen.
So the computer Janella'd you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. 7th inning stretch. We just left Wrigley Field, and I'm going to ride down. Excuse me, the home stretch, not Wrigley Field. I'm going to ride down the home stretch with Pete. Did you hear what I said, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
You want me to repeat?
Oh, it is. Yeah, Pete. Repeat.
Okay. And then somebody who's going to square me away and tell me I don't know Jack. So starting out with repeat. Good afternoon, Pete.
Good afternoon, Uncle Bob. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Hey, I really like that portmanteau, Janella-ing. You know, when I used to be in GPD, we had a Bolaro. Bolaro was a police officer who overturned his vehicle onto its, where it was face up or bottom up.
Uh-huh.
So we would tell people, be careful when when you're doing a hot pursuit, make sure you don't Bolaro.
Uh-huh.
So anyways, just to add a little bit more confusion to the conversation, I know there was a recent bill introduced in the House to make D.C. a state. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a bad idea. And once
do you think it's even going to go anywhere?
Well, obviously not when the Republicans control one of the houses, because D.C. is 105% Democrat.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just wanted to see what you thought about that. I mean, there's so much confusion over what Neil Weir is trying to do. I think it's just part and parcel for the electorate or the people who are running for candidate to lap it up as well and use it, because I see that there was a post, or there's several posts with Michael St. Nicholas, and everyone's just singing his praises about this hearing that happened.
Uh-huh.
And I was really underwhelmed with the testimony. And like I said yesterday, to me, it was just more of an opportunity to kiss up to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I agree on that.
All right, Uncle Bob. I'll let the line go so that you can be schooled on what Jack is and what Jack isn't.
And that I don't know Jack.
Yeah.
Okay, Pete. Thanks for calling.
All right. Let's stop.
Okay, so let's find out. First of all, let's find out what drive-through you're in right now, Jack. Is it supper time? Are you at Wendy's? Have you ordered yet?
It's supper time, and actually, I'm almost at KFC in Dedido.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure the great Colonel Sanders is still there, and no BLM people have taken it down because of his plantation owner costume there that he's wearing.
Well, I hope you get there within 5 minutes, because we'll be off the air in 5 minutes, and we won't be able to do that routine with you ordering your dinner.
I'm quite a distance away from it, but I'll be there soon. But I called because I just wanted to say that I agree that D.C. shouldn't have, shouldn't be a state, but moreover, it shouldn't even have a representation, because D.C. was created to be a transient place. It's not meant to be a permanent residential place for political parties or political advocates or for lobbyists. I mean, I know the property value there is pretty high, and I know there's a lot of poor areas there. I mean, you just go through the major universities, Georgetown, American University, and all those universities that are around there. I mean, once you're outside that hub or that bubble, it's like, you're taking your life in your own hands. So it's not meant to be a permanent residential place. It's meant to be a transitory place. And you go there, you do your government business or what needs to be done for the nation, and then you go home. You're not supposed to occupy that spot 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was what D.C. was supposed to be. And, when it comes to presidential elections, let's be real about this. If you really value your vote for presidents, your strength is in the political parties and the primaries. Both parties here in Guam do not trust the Guam Election Commission to do the primaries for presidential elections, the primaries now. Why? Because they control the powers. You don't, there's no qualification. I mean, even the owner of even Ray Gibson went and registered as a Democrat to vote for Barack. And, it makes you wonder why the presidents aren't put in the primaries, because that's where the power lies. That's where the parties know. Parties know that when it comes to the presidential elections, it lies in the primaries, and they control the primaries when it comes to presidential elections. You don't have to go register at GEC as the Guam Election Commission. You just go down to wherever they're holding their fandango, and if you have a quest card or something, or they recognize you, say, "Oh yeah, sign here. Who are you going to vote here? Here's your ballot," and that's it. You don't even have a choice to vote for who delegates you want to choose. You have to be a member of the party. So, if you really value your presidential ballot or your presidential vote, then moreover, you should be a member of one of the two major parties, and you should emphasize that in your party platform. You should be able to pick the person that you want to send to the delegate, You should be able to not some sort of backroom committee that picks who gets to get the delegate. You should be able to vote for who you want to send to the convention or the caucus. But you just look back since 2004 and probably even before then. So we've had presidential elections that are happening. I mean, we had Hillary Clinton call out here. We had Barack Obama call out here. We even had representatives for Mitt Romney calling here. Bernie Sanders, I get calls. And these are not robocalls. These are actual people on the other side of the line asking for your vote, my vote, during the primary. So, I just wonder who's pushing this agenda for presidential general elections. And when the numbers, the facts, and even the events that point to the primary as the major influencer when it comes to, if Guam has influence, it would be in the primaries, the nomination of who gets to go to the big dance. What do you think about that, Bob?
Good point, Jack. I gotta go, so enjoy your supper at where?
Okay.
Wendy's? No, Kentucky Fried.
KFC.
Okay, talk to you later, Jack.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Will they stay or will they go? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. More protests at the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon overnight.